Hi, this is Granny B of Granny B Crochets, and I wanted to share with you basically what it would look like if you decide to use the Granny Square yarn by Red Heart to make a corner to corner blanket. And I just want to show you the little tips and tricks I did to help my colors fall into place better. And so, first thing I want to tell you what I did. Typically, on your corner to corner pattern, as you know, you chain 3 at the beginning of the stitch, and then you do 3 double crochets. So right here you would normally chain 3 and then do 3 double crochets to finish off that block. I only chained 2 because on the granny square pattern there's 3 double crochets make each little cluster on the granny square, but there's only a chain 1 in between them. And so I'm trying to as closely resemble those stitches as I can. So that's one reason why I only did a chain 2 in here. The second reason is if your color bleeds over into the next square at the color change by only just a little bit, you can go back and just add a 3rd chain right there, and that will pull up that little extra and make your colors fall into place. And you don't have to go back very far to do that, because there are times when sometimes just one more chain right here will get those colors where they belong. The other thing is, if you only put 2 chains right here, your colors go farther. It's just, because it's going to eat that, one little stitch, one little chain's worth of yarn every square. As you get to these longer colors, it's going to add more yarn at the end. So once I do my chain 2, then I'm working on my 3 double crochets, and almost every time on this navy blue is the center color of the granny square, and almost every time, I think every single time that I've done it, because it's got that extra 4 inches at the end for the tail, plus the chains in the middle, I end up at exactly 4.5 squares. No matter what I can do, it's not quite enough to make a 5th square. But even if I add, do a chain 3 on these other ones instead of a chain 2, that just made it that much shorter. So I stuck with the chain 2. And then when I do this end one, I only do 2 double crochets, because you see there's my color chain. So I just do 2 double crochets and go ahead and slip stitch it. And you really can't tell. And see, there's one right there. And if you look at it, if you didn't know what to look for, you can barely tell the difference in that square and the other squares. You would have to sit down here and really, go over the blanket. It doesn't jump out at you. There's some more navy blue squares, and you see that really that smaller one, you can't really pick it out at which end it's on. So that is the first thing I do. If my color change doesn't make it all the way to the end of the square, but it gets me 2 double crochets, then I just stop there and slip stitch into the chain space to start the next block. Because what you want to do is you want your color change to fall into these chains that you start your block with. These chains that are at the beginning of each block, they're going to be crocheted over on the way back. So your color chain can fall anywhere in those 2 or 3 chains. I put 2 chains, the original pattern, and most people put in 3. Either way, you want your color change to fall in on this group of chains right here, because when you come back the other way, you're going to crochet over it and you're going to hide it. So if you can't get it to end right at the top of the stitch like I did here, as long as it's in this section, you're fine. So that's what I do if my yarn doesn't quite give me a full square. But as long as I have 2 double crochets in here, then I go ahead and make it a square and I stop. Okay, so now I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to crochet further on so I can show you what I do for the other situations that come up. I'm at the edge of my blanket here, and I do want to point out, unless you're going to put a border around the blanket, this is not someplace you want a color change. You want to make sure these edges stay nice and pretty. And I have not had a problem on any of my edges so far. The colors have never ended on the edge. So that's good news for all of us. So far, of course, I'm not completely finished. I still have the rest of this corner to go. But so far, I have not had to worry about any kind of a color change really right on the edge. And so that's a good thing, because although I'm turning this into a sweater and this will get stitched together, it's not really going to get covered up, because I use the mattress stitch to put my sweaters together. So this will show. And so I still want it pretty. Hi, Pepe. He's got to get in the picture. So I just wanted to pause and show you that you want to make sure, the one thing, that you don't have your color change landing on the open edge unless you are going to put a border on your blanket. Thank you for pausing. Okay, so I've gone on to where the next color change is. And on this square, I have my chain 3 and I have the first double crochet, but the green comes up before I even hardly get the second one started. So it will be a mixture, and the third one is going to be all green, and that's not how I want this square to go. Now, I will tell you that when I started the blanket, the colors formed their squares much nicer than they are now, because I was increasing at the edge, and now I'm decreasing at the edge, and it uses the yarn up differently. And so once I made my first corner, that's when I started having a few more issues with the colors coming into place. But you can't tell. If you look at this, my squares are falling into place, and you cannot see where I've made these adjustments unless you are really looking hard for them. It blends in really nicely. So in this case, when I have way too much left over, but not enough to get that second double crochet, I don't want to have a 1 double crochet block. That is going to be too tiny and too noticeable. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to back that up, and I'm going to put 1 more double crochet right in here. So in this time, instead of having 3 double crochets, we're going to have 4. And that uses up that yarn enough so that when I go over here and start my chains, well, it did till I stretched it out. Your yarn stretches. So if you take things apart and recrochet them, as I have been doing while I'm trying to get this up for demonstration, the yarn will stretch, and you will find you have more of it as you're going along. So I backed up, and I went ahead and put an extra chain right there. And then I'm going to put 4 double crochets into this square. And that's going to use up that extra yarn for me, so that when I come here and make my chains, it puts my color change right in with these little chains, which I'm going to crochet over. So it's okay. They will be hidden. So I go ahead and continue on with my double crochets on the next color block. So right now, when you're looking at it, yes, it's got a blue edge. But remember, we're going to crochet over that coming back, and that will make that blue edge disappear, and all you will have is a green block. So if you come up that you can make 2 full double crochets, then go ahead and just make that but you can't make a third one. Go ahead and make that your block. If you come up where you can only make 1 double crochet and your color change shows up in the second one, then instead pull that out and add 1 more double crochet to this block. And that should get your color change dropping into the chains where you want it. And like I said, unless you are looking for the problem, you really cannot see where I've made these adjustments along the way. And I didn't have to make them. Like I said, in the beginning, the colors fell into place much nicer, but there was a little bit of trouble once I made the turns into the smaller corner. That kind of threw the colors off for a little bit. But that's okay. There's enough distance in there that it's not going to that I'm going to get it worked out. But as you can see how nicely the color blocks look this way, it makes for much prettier blanket than if we let those odd color changes land in the middle of our squares. So that's what I did so that I could get all my squares to be all the same color. And I just wanted to share that with you. I hope this helps. It gives you something else to do with that granny square yarn, because some of the colors they are coming out with are so pretty. But if you're like me, that granny square was a little too hard for me to do. I had to make a lot of adjustments, but it was, I don't know, my gauge was wrong or something. It was just kind of a struggle. And also, I had seen someone else just make a small corner to corner square out of it, which worked really well. So I thought, let's see what happens when I go larger. And the only issue I had when I went larger is that as I went, because we have that tail on the end of the white and the blue, that it kind of threw the color changes off a little bit as I worked the blanket. And then, like I said, once I got up here and turned my corner and started working down, slip stitching along the edge uses different amount of yarn than making the chain 6 and making the new square on the end, just enough that it threw me off a little bit more on colors that in the beginning I wasn't having as much trouble with. But that's okay. You can't tell that minor adjustment, and the blanket's turning out really nice. And so I hope this helps you. Do something else with the granny square yarn, because if you're like me and fell in love with some of the colors, you're like, this is beautiful, and you bought the yarn and then you make the granny square and it's not cooperating very well, this is plan B. We can do corner to corner and those squares fall in pretty nicely with just some few easy adjustments right where the colors connect, so you don't have to take a lot out and change your tension and try to get the colors to work out around every granny square you're making. And maybe if I practice those granny squares, that it will get better. But I didn't want to. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to find something that it would work with. And so I did. All right. Well, thank you for crocheting along with me. I hope this helped. If you've made anything else with the granny square yarn besides granny squares, I would love to see what you've done. Just send me a picture in the comments. Happy crocheting, and we'll talk to you later.